Italy. It's a place that is assaulting all your senses in an almost divine way. There's classical music for your ears, Italian cuisine for your taste, soft leather and smooth clothes for you to touch, the smell of the Mediterranean, most importantly, a feast for your eyes. Paintings, sculptures, design vistas, women, fashion, architecture, furniture, the lot. Italy has it all. Italy has it beautiful. Luckily for us, they do cars as well, and the same story goes. Okay, they may not technically be superior to the Germans and may not last longer in the rain than a dissolving tablet, and their electrical systems could benefit from an exorcism, but we still love them because they please our senses, not the brain. It's shocking then that such a hedonistically driven culture can also create some really hideous looking cars, but it does happen, often enough to make this kind of video. Here are the top 10 ugliest cars to ever come out of Italy. Number 10. Rare and collectible, Zagato cars were always a case of hit or miss, but never plain boring. This long-running coach builder gave us the jaw-dropping Vanquish on one end and this atrocity on the other. Except this is not designed by Zagato at all, but by Fiat, who I presume used Legos to do it. Zagato just helped putting it all together. Either way, the 80s were over, designers learned how to draw curves again, so why so boxy? And what happened to the back? They stacked it up so high that it's more like a set of closet drawers in a car. If you ever end up in a pileup crash, you would have never noticed because the front and the back are already completely vertical. As it is, not a single detail of this car looks good, and yet, as a whole, somehow it's oddly entrancing. It was also nicknamed Il Mostro, the monster. Some say it was because of the performance, but most people agree it's because of the questionable looks. Number 9. Ferrari Testarossa is an instantly recognizable, iconic supercar of the 80s, but that's where it should have stayed, in the 80s. Sadly, instead of retiring it and coming up with a true successor for the next decade, Ferrari thought it would be a great idea to touch it up a bit with then trendy-looking, smoother lines like the 355 had. It didn't work. Everything that was good about the sharp 80s was diluted, awkwardly positioned and melted away. Headlights are bad, the front bumper was too busy, round taillights were forcefully crammed into its square holes, wheels were bad, and the unchanged roof and side blades were now completely out of tune with the rest of the car. In the end, only 500 of these god-awful medleys were ever built, and not for exclusivity. Number 8. Ever since the original Fiat 500, Italy was good at making tiny, simple, feel-good, zippy cars. They were like an excited, tail-wagging little dog that would always put a smile on your face. This Lancia Y will not do that. It'll make you feel drab, cloudy, and moist. One look at it and your face will resemble its face. Sad-looking eyes, smirky nose, a dribbling, tucked-in jaw. To make matters worse, it had this Salvador Dali mustache wrapped around it. But while he was proudly pointing his up, Lancia's just loses its strength and just slides off the ends. But that's where the worst thing happened. Because of the awkward proportions, they made the back of it look like it was a full-size van on a tiny car. Just drive it into a wall, I'm sure it'll look better then. Number 7. The 166 was a big, wide, executive car that would show the Germans what a stylish businessman should be driving. In reality, it showed nothing but an ugly face that only Ray Charles could enjoy. For such a big car, they found the smallest, saddest headlights they could, almost the size of fog lamps, and then they put them as wide apart as possible. Made the car look like Sid, that sloth from the Ice Age movies. But that wasn't enough because they also made the distinctive Alfa Romeo grille the smallest grille ever, and it sits too far up. Out of proportion and out of place. Perfectly summed up the face of this car. So few businessmen bought it that Alfa completely abandoned the big executive car segment for good. Number 6. Let's be real. It looks like a transformer that died halfway through transforming into a car. It looks like a Chinese replica of Aventador whose design was described over a phone. It looks like a car that crashed into a warehouse of Lambo parts. It looks like it was designed using origami technique. It looks like someone drove into a wood chipper. It looks like it came in a box with a set of AA batteries. I know that Lambos were always crazy. This is the craziest of them all, and it's littered with cool details everywhere, but none of them look right. Everything's too big, too broken up, and too wide for anyone to call it beautiful. It's also so rare you'll probably never see one, and that's a good thing. Number 5. This maniacal-looking Ferrari was a couple of firsts for its company. First wagon, first all-wheel drive, and first Ferrari that kids hated to look at. I'll give it a pass for being a shooting brake because any other Ferrari for 4 people ended up looking awkward. But it's impossible not to notice the elephant in the room. That huge grinning face with teeth retainers. It's too high up from the ground, and it's flanked on both sides by these ridiculous intakes that look like a frog inflating its vocal sacs. The whole thing could have been done so much better, and it was when they made the successor, the GT C4 Lusso. But this one will forever stay in history as the maniacal frog wagon Ferrari. Number 4. In the mid-2000s, car world was obsessed with modern retro cars. There was the Mustang, Camaro, and absolutely adorable Fiat 500. It was a cute little car that perfectly complemented those chihuahuas and a shaved pair of legs. Its size made it woefully impractical, but no one cared, and more than 1 million were sold. After Fiat realized how popular it was, they went to make more practical, bigger, and uglier version. Something no one has asked for. It swelled up almost beyond recognition, just vaguely hinting to the original with its artistic details that ultimately made it look like a fat larva. It's truly, deeply ugly. Did I mention it could now seat up to 7 people? Talk about stretching it too far. Number 3. Yes, I'm calling it out. This rolling sculpture, this art form, the jewel of automotive industry, is as ugly as it is fast, and that's a lot. Zonda was so cool because it was absolutely bonkers, littered with wild detail top to bottom. For this one, Pagani wanted to tame it down a little bit, but then it went too far. The lines are now much cleaner, uninterrupted, and the whole shape is boring. The back looked so bland, with the taillights looking like an afterthought. The side was inspired, it seems, by a spread of Nutella on a slice of bread, but that's nothing to what happened to the front. Odd headlights, flapping nostrils, tall pointing nose, and a huge gaping mouth, finished off with a double chin, made it look like that aquarium poo-eating fish. It's no wonder that more and more Huayras were ordered with an optional front splitter and some more interesting color combinations. It's less of a wonder that people are still ordering the discontinued Zonda. Number 2. I know what you're thinking. Is this a Ferrari? Really? It looks a lot like a kit car, something that a sleepy student would make as their science project, but it was supposed to be far more advanced than that. Enzo wanted to make a more sensible, cheaper supercar for the everyday, boring people. One that is easy to see out of, can go over a speed bump, and can take your kids as well. With all those things making precedence over what a real supercar should be, it ended up looking like a cheap knockoff from the Eastern Communist bloc. Even with a stretched-out cabin that made you sit too far up front, the wheelbase looked awfully short, with huge and tall overhangs. Sensible thinking made it ill-proportioned and downright ugly. But it also meant that it had no interesting details about it. The back was boring, front was boring, everywhere boring. It's so bad that on a scale of terrible things that came out of Italy, fascism has more fans than this Ferrari. Number 1. It is widely considered as the ugliest car in the world. Just look at it. It's a muffin top that's gone bad, and it's covered with mold spots. Like a bacteria-infected car bubbling out of its sickness. As if they chopped up 2 different ugly cars and glued them back together. But they didn't just stop on the outside, because the interior, if anything, is even worse. That center console was designed in the dark, using a snail as a pen. And look at those lines on the steering wheel, they don't even meet in the middle. This car was made ugly on purpose, as if they tried their best to make it as atrocious as possible. And that for a country that gave us Pavarotti, Mona Lisa, high fashion, and delicious cuisine equal to a deadly sin. Shame on them. Agree with the picks? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more interesting videos from Top Cars TV.